Good morning and welcome to The Real with Rich. Today I have some special panel guests who have been involved in the educational system for a few years now. So if I would, with my guest starting with Ms. Sanders, would you introduce yourself and tell your position that you hold and why you entered the field of education?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mrs. Danita Delaney Sanders. I am the instructional data support coach here at the elementary school. The reason why I entered into education is because I've always had a passion for making connections with students and making sure that I am teaching them to become better citizens.
All right, my name is Felicia Collins. I am the school nurse. I have 6 years pediatric background specialty, and I just wanted to get into education to broaden my horizon and get into a new aspect of pediatrics.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Goldie Ramsey. I am the special educator, instructional teacher here, and I went into education, particularly special ed, because I was interested in bridging the gap for the children that seem to have no voice or sometimes have no advocate.
Hi everyone, my name is Joyce Buford-Pickney. I'm a school social worker. I'm probably a golden ager here. You know, when I was asked to do this, and he said, people have been doing this for a couple of years, I said, that's funny, I've been doing this a couple of decades. Anyway, I started because prior to being a social worker here, I was a probation officer, and I always wanted to kind of reach the kids before they got to that point. And I said, what better chance to do that than to be a social worker within the school system? So this is why I started.
Well, thank you ladies so much for joining us today. I know you have a busy schedule, so we won't be long. So I'm just going to ask you two quick questions about your positions. The first is, I want you to reflect on what is the most difficult aspect of your job when dealing with your students, also parents, and the community at large. So we'll start right to left. Ms. Pickney?
The most difficult thing to address, I think, is just trying to get the parents to understand we need their support. A lot of times when I deal with the parents, they said, okay, I give my child to you. Particularly when I was at probation office, they would just say, okay, I can't do anything with Johnny, and so now it's your problem. And you have to let them know it's not basically my problem. I'm trying to help you deal with your child. So trying to get the parents to understand it's a collaborative kind of thing. It's not just either or. We need your support as well.
That's right.
For me, it's once I recognize the child's deficit and then contacting the parent, then I realized that the parents academically themselves struggled in elementary school and middle and high school. So their deficit is then now, catapulted because now they're raising a child and they missed a large chunk of the social emotional balancing and the educational foundation. So it's almost educating two children while trying to be responsible for the academic gains of the child that I have during the school clock hours. So it's bridging a gap over a large bridge of water.
I understand.
I would say that the largest difficulty that I come into contact with is being limited on what I can do or what I can provide in a school setting.
Right.
Whether that's emotional, nurses tend to look at what the real problem is instead of diagnosing. We want to treat. So for some children, they come in, they may say that they're sick or they don't feel well, but there's really something going at home. As nurses, we don't tend to brush them aside. We want to ask them, what happened last night? We want to try to get to the root because sometimes the children are lacking emotional, social support at home. And sometimes, we can supplement that in the school setting. But when it comes to medication or the healthcare aspect of it, there's very little sometimes that we are able to do in the school setting. And when you don't have parents to back you up to get the children the resources that they need, then sometimes the children just suffer.
Okay.
In any building, data is very important to drive instruction, to identify resources that a school might need, from recommending students to SST processes. We always make sure that we look at data for those things. What I find difficult is making sure that the data that we encounter is valid, make sure that it's reliable, make sure that the assessments that we're giving our kids mimic state standards, and making sure that they're grouped correctly in the classroom, making sure that the teachers are using that data to drive their instructions in order to meet the needs of certain kids, to make sure that the teachers actually know how to analyze the data and what it actually means in terms of services, instructional strategies for certain students. We know that all of our students do not learn the same. Everyone is different. So making sure that we use data to drive everything that we do.
Good answer. Thank you, ladies. Now, my producers informed me that once we released the fact that we would have educators on the show, the number one question that came back from our polls was, as aspiring young people who aspire to be in the field of education, what advice would you give them in obtaining your current position? How would they go if you could give them that roadmap to how to get to where you are now? What advice would you give them? And we'll start with Ms. Sanders.
Number one, you have to be intrinsically motivated. And you have to be inspired to, wanting to do better. It took me a minute to get to my position because I knew that I had to work hard. I knew that my work would eventually pay off. I didn't know when, but just being intrinsically motivated, not looking for people to do stuff for you, but do it for yourself, is number one priority.
Thank you. Good answer.
The advice that I would give is to find something that you love to do. Don't go after something that is worth, just a paycheck. You want to find something that you would be happy doing, secure doing, regardless of the financial aspect. And then you just have to make a plan. Make a plan, make a backup plan, and make a backup for the backup plan. Because not all of us are always successful the first time around. And you just have to know how to pick yourself up. If you do fail, you have to understand how to readjust or change what you've been doing to get ultimately to where you want to be.
Great answers.
For me, understand that you are an advocate for children. You are their advocate. So you are their best friend and sometimes their worst enemy because you are advocating for what's best for them. This position is not for the faint at heart. So wake up every day, a new day, and do this from a place outside of financial gain, outside of personal glorification. You do this for the children, and if that is not your interest, then do not sign up. This is for the children. And once you decide to do it and move forward in that, and you gain that momentum, it will benefit you in the end. It definitely will.
I guess the advice I would give someone if they wanted to be a social worker is you cannot think in terms of immediate gratification because it is not the highest paying job. Initially when you start, you just have to have a desire to want to help others, want to help people. I see so many women that are without jobs, without places to stay. You have to deal with that aspect of it, trying to find them housing, jobs, money to pay their utilities. A lot of times the population that I deal with, they do not have anything. But you have to encourage them in spite of what you don't have. Encourage them to send their kids to school and to try to make a better life for them. Now eventually, if you stay in it long enough, it does pay off. But you just have to have a desire to want to help others.
Thank you. Again, some really great information. And as we bring this to a close, the last thing I want you guys to just ponder and reflect on for a moment. Oftentimes, in the field of education, you're supervised by a principal, someone who may not be an expert in the field in which you study. What advice would you give aspiring principals for their supervision techniques or tactics to handle somebody in your position or a position that they may not be as familiar in or as skilled in when it comes to maybe another position such as a teacher? Most principals have been teachers, so they understand what teachers are expected to do. But most principals have not been data coaches or school nurses, or especially not in your position, Ms. Pinkney. So what advice would you give them when they go to supervise these roles? And we can just, whoever would like to answer that question first.
I'll start. Just ask questions.
Yeah.
Ask questions as often or as many times as you need to, and trust the staff person in your building
Yes.
to do the job that they've been hired to do.
I think it's definitely a benefit to establish a rapport of trust and understanding. This person is credentialed, is licensed, and well-informed. So ask those questions and believe in them. They are your expert in the building, and push them and require them to use the expertise to the benefit of all children that it affects.
And also, research.
Yes.
So if there's something that you don't understand, just like we have our teachers, to research if it's a content or area that, or a topic that they're unsure about teaching, then we expect for them to research, and so they can get a better understanding of it. Research.
I think to keep an open mind, I immediate administrator came to me, I never shall forget, and he came to me the first couple of days before school began, and he said, "You're the social worker, right?" And I said, "Right." And he said, "Okay, we need to talk." And I think I embrace that, because it's like, okay, I know what you are, I know what you do, but I need to have that dialogue, and I have that open line of communication, that open door kind of policy. So I have an issue, okay, we'll address that.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining my show today, The Real with Rich. And as we go to final thoughts, the field of education is extremely hard. With today's youth being difficult and with technology being at their fingertips, it's hard not only to get their attention, but also to keep their attention. But we need to make sure that we're providing the wraparound services for all of our students to be successful. Thanks so much for logging in today to The Real with Rich. And remember, it takes a village to raise a child, but a nation to educate one. Thank you.